Hello, my name is Chang Day Feng.
And my name is Mark Rabinovich.
We're here today to talk about stamping die, focusing primarily on types of cutting operations. Stamping die is essential in the manufacturing industry as it produces many parts that are used in daily life.
Stamping die is a precision measurement that cuts and forms sheet metal into a specific shape or form. Tool steel is a type of hardenable steel that is used to make the cutting and forming sections. The stamping die is placed into a reciprocating stamping press. When the press moves up or down, the top or bottom die will move with it respectively. This allows the material to feed. Completed part of the die is removed for each stroke.
Stamping is a type of machining in which no heat is introduced to the die or the sheet material. Friction occurs between the cutting tool and the workpiece during the cutting and forming process. This causes the stamped parts to be hot when exiting the dies.
In forming, sheet metals are deformed through tension, compression, or both. The mechanical properties of the metals being used are what determines how successful the sheet forming is, because the metal must be able to stretch and compress within given limits.
In cutting, metals are placed in a small gap between bypassing tool steel sections. This gap is called the cutting clearance. The most common cutting clearance used is about 10% of the metal's thickness. Since there is a significant amount of shock to the die and press, there needs to be a very high force to cut metals.
There are many different kinds of cutting operations, each with its own unique purpose. Such operations include trimming, notching, blanking, piercing or perforating, lancing, and nibbling.
The most basic type of cutting is trimming. Trimming is used to cut away the unwanted confines of the metal to shape it into a more defined structure. For example, when a piece is badly cut, trimming is required to remove the non-essential parts.
The next cutting operation is notching. Notching is when a progressive die is used to cut the outside of a sheet metal to create a specific strip profile. Tube notching is one of the most common types of notching operations. It is implemented to create a T or similar joint between tubes. For example, tube notching is used in building bicycle frames where there are many angled tubes. Each one has to be notched so that all of them fit the design perfectly.
Two cutting processes that are quite similar to each other are blanking and piercing. In both processes, a punch and die are used to cut out a shape in a long, flexible material. In blanking, the piece that is punched out is called the blank or slug. It is usually done with scrap metals. Blanking can be used to produce flat objects such as washers, base plates, and flat connectors. In piercing, also known as perforating, the workpiece is punched to receive a specific design onto it. The difference between these two mechanisms is that in blanking, the slug is used, while in piercing, the slug is disposed of.
A specific example of blanking is fine blanking. Fine blanking is when there is no fracture zone in the cutting process. This allows the blanking to hold very tight tolerances. It maintains flatness and enhances the sheared edge, eliminating die break or edge fracture.
Next is lancing. Lancing is an operation in which the workpiece is clipped and bent in one swift motion without the reduction of the material. Instead, it modifies the workpiece configuration. One side of it remains connected to be bent rather than having a closed.
Finally, the last cutting operation that will be talked about in this video is nibbling. Nibbling is a process in which the outline of a desired shape is cut. This is done by having small cuts overlap their slits or notches. The punching process is done quickly, reciprocating between 300 to 900 times per minute. Rectangular punches are commonly used in nibbling because they minimize waste. Sometimes the finished contours are subjected to filling or grinding to increase the accuracy and smoothness.
In conclusion, there are many ways that stamping dies can be used to produce countless valuable products. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thank you for listening.